Right at the beginning, where were the soldiers from and what was the criteria for the selection?
Well, its soldiers are from the 5 regional economic communities of the African continent. That is the North African Capability, the East African Community, the Southern African Development Community, the East and Central African Community, as well as the Economic Community of the West African states. So soldiers were drawn from those countries. Each country may use its own criteria in terms of selecting the best out of what they have. Those then would be part of the African Union standby force. And then they were coming to South Africa to have been trained or to undergo the training that has been taking place for the past 3 weeks, as you've mentioned.
Now, speaking of the training, take us through the exercises that were undertaken by the soldiers.
Well, the exercise was based on a fictitious country that was simulating a sort of instability in that country called Corona. Now, in that instance, we first exercised the rapid deployment capability of the African Standby Force, whereby a situation will happen that the security situation is deteriorated and there's been a gross human rights violation in such an extent that the African Union feels that they should send in a force to intervene and stop that crisis. Then that was the first part. And then the second part is whereby the forces were exercised in normal, traditional peacekeeping capabilities or peacekeeping exercises where they can go into a situation, exercise humanitarian assistance, routine peacekeeping roles as stipulated in the UN Charter, Charter 6, UN Charter.
General, are you confident that the soldiers are ready for their first deployment early next year?
Well, based on the reports that we have received from those who are conducting and supervising the exercise, is that the African Union or the African continent has the capability to deploy a force, either be in a rapid deployment capability or in a traditional peacekeeping role.
Now, talk to us about the role of the African Union Standby Force specifically. What is the protocol to respond to crisis?
Well, the protocol to respond to crisis, it will be determined by the structures of the AU, which on time to time are monitoring the situation as it happens in different countries. And then on the basis that have been submitted to those structures, the structures will recommend that there should be a force that is deployed in that particular area on the basis of what they've got at hand.
Now, you've just mentioned the AU in this context. Is the standby force a separate entity on its own and support and provide support for the AU? How exactly does that relationship work?
Well, we should not take it as a separate entity from the AU. We should take it as an instrument of the African Union that it will use to either pursue its objectives or to protect its own objectives or purposes. In this case, it will be peace and stability within the continent, which are the requirements for conducive growth, which are the requirements for growth and for economic growth and development.
Now let's look at some of the challenges that the African continent is facing. I mean, there's Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab. How are we going to deal with that exactly? And maybe you can mention some more challenges that I haven't mentioned in this context.
Well, those are instances that are happening currently, of which the African Union is still pursuing the best option on how to deal and handle those instances. However, if we come to the force itself, and then the AU will have taken a decision to say that in this particular instance, we need to deploy this force of this size with these capabilities.
General, does everyone on the continent support the force?
When you say everyone, in this case, we'll be saying, do each and every country that is a member state of the African Union support that force? Yes, it is, because it was a decision that was taken consensus previously when the when the Organization of African Union was transformed into the African Union. And you remember soon after that, then there was this concept of establishing African Standby Force, which should be operational by the end of December 2015.
Now, just finally, General, let's look at this training specifically. It's now just ended. Is there going to be consistent training throughout the years? How exactly is it going to happen going forward?
Well, the training within the military, what keeps you going as a military and what keeps you confirmed to say that you have a force that can stand any challenges is continuous training and evaluation of that training if that still meets the demands of that particular time, of the particular moment. So there will be continuous exercises which will be scheduled to train or exercise a particular capability, or to evaluate or test a certain capability within the force itself. So it's not something that is gone and forgotten. There will be some follow-up exercises.
We'll have to leave it there, General. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.